So welcome again to the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council's 21st annual meeting. My name is Gib Vacconi. I'm the chair. My pronouns are he and him. And we're calling the meeting to order at this point. Our first item of business is the minutes to our October 15th general meeting. These minutes have been circulated in advance to all of the members, and hopefully you have had a chance to review them. At this point, I will I will ask for a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and accept the minutes as presented. If you would like to make that motion, please use your controls in Zoom to raise your hand. I see Denny on my screen and she raised her hand, so I'm assuming she is making that motion. Is there a second? That's seconded by Steve. And as we have a motion and a second to waive the reading of the minutes and accept them as presented, I will ask if there is any objection. And if there is any objection, please raise your hand. Seeing no objection, the reading of the minutes is waived, and the minutes of the October 15th general meeting are accepted as presented. Thank you. Just a brief report from the chair this evening. This has been a year in which we've continued to add membership to the council. We, following our last October 15th general meeting, we added a couple of new members, and we now have 202 members in the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council. If you're attending this meeting and you're not one of those 202 people, but you're interested in joining, you can do so at the link that I have just posted in the chat. So you're welcome to follow that and join and become a member of the council as well. We're going to go now straight into election of officers. This is a thing we do annually, and it's going to be a little bit different this year because we are going to accept some nominations from the floor. So everyone should have received a ballot, not a ballot, I'm sorry, a slate of candidates with statements from the candidates. And we have also the ability this evening to accept nominations from the floor. So we're going to go through the officers up for election individually, and those of you who would like to make a nomination may do so by raising your hand. There is a qualification criteria for folks to be eligible for nomination as a candidate for office. It's a little bit more stringent than the criteria for being a member in good standing. The criteria is that you must have all of your dues paid as of this evening, which is also a criteria for good standing. You must have joined PHNDC more than 12 months prior to this meeting. And you must not have missed more than one meeting of the council in a row during the last 12 months. So as we take nominations from the floor, Emily, our secretary, will let us know if the person nominated meets the eligibility requirement, and if they do, they will then have an opportunity to accept or decline the nomination, and if they accept, they can make a statement to the group. Before we go forward with that, does anyone have any questions on that process? I'm amazed that I don't see any hands up, but it seems like no one has any questions. Sorry. So we're going to begin with the office of chair. This you may have seen earlier in an email. We had a nomination on the slate for this, but that has been withdrawn. So we are accepting nominations from the floor this evening. If you would like to make a nomination for anyone to stand for election to this position, you may do so now. You are also able to nominate yourself if you like. And so we'll now open the floor for nominations for the position of chair. Well, I'm not seeing a lot of takers on that one so far. I only can see some of you on my screen. So if you do want to make a nomination, please raise your hand in Zoom and you'll jump to the top of the attendee list. Um, While if this is something you'd like to think about a little bit more, we'll move on to the next office up for election, which is secretary. We have a nominee by our nominating committee, which is Emily, and we will also take other nominations from the floor. Hearing no nominations from the floor, we will proceed to our third office this evening, and that office is our at-large directors. There are two at-large positions available in this election, and we have three candidates already on the ballot, but we are able to take other nominations from the floor if anyone else would like to serve, would like that opportunity, or no, or would like to propose someone else. Well, this is the first time we've done nominations from the floor, and it's a bit of a barn burner, I can see, but I'll go back one more time to see if we have anybody who would like to make a nomination for any of the offices that we have discussed this evening, chair, secretary, or at-large director. Seeing none, we will go ahead with our election of officers. What we're going to do now, if you can just bear with us a second, is we are going to email all of you who are present and who are members in good standing a link, an email link to a ballot, and you will use that ballot to submit your votes. So if you can give me a second, we'll go ahead and do that, and I will come back to you when we're done receiving votes. Please try to fill out your ballot as soon as you get your ballot. And while we're in that process, we're going to move on to committee reports. I'm going to do the committee reports out of order, and mainly because the first committee report on the agenda would be one I will make, and I'm going to need a couple minutes to put together the ballot I'm sending out to you all. So instead, I would like to call on Mary Shuford, the chair of the Landmarks Committee, to make a report from the Landmarks Committee. Mary, I know, oh, you're here, yes. Hold on. There you go.
It wasn't an easy unmute, sorry. I'm Mary Shuford. I'm co-chair with, my pronouns are she, her. I am co-chair with Gieb of the Landmarks Committee. Renovations continue in Prospect Heights. However, I'm sure everybody's aware, because there are lots of them on all blocks. Landmarks Committee only reviews those certificate of appropriateness applications which include exterior modifications. particularly those which are visible from public thoroughfare and thus impact the historic context of the neighborhood. We had a steady stream of them in the fall. 304 Prospect Place had an application to replace a full width, 8-foot deep open deck with a raised full width, 10-foot deep enclosed 1-story unheated porch at the parlor level. 344 Park Place, which is at the corner of Sterling and Underhill, had an application to actually add 2 windows to the side of the building, but those were windows that had been previously closed up, so they were just reopening them. The new owner is doing this. Their windows are at the parlor and second floors, and they will match existing windows. They are also adding a small rear yard deck with a railing and stairway that'll be partially visible from Underhill Avenue. At 286 Sterling Place, which is the corner of, was on Sterling Place. And anyway, the application there was to modify and minimally expand the existing rear yard extension to the full width of the building and to add a new sliding door. And then this past winter, recently, we've had an application from 186 Underhill, which will be the new Radio Bakery storefront that's opening on Underhill Avenue. The storefront itself was approved by the LPC staff. However, for whatever reason, the signage needed to be subject to a hearing. And anyway, we're all looking forward to Radio Bakery being here, although apparently you have to get up very early in the morning to get anything because they sell out quickly. And then the final one we considered was the application for a full width, 1-story, 23-foot deep extension at 273 Park Place. They are also adding a setback rooftop addition that will not be visible from Park Place. For the most part, our committee did not have any significant objections to any of these applications, and they were approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission, a few with minor modifications. And if anybody has any questions or any more details about it, they can certainly reach out to me, but we're trying to get this done quickly tonight. Does anybody have any questions now?
There was one question in the chat about 158 Prospect Place.
Wait, hold on a second. Okay. 158 Prospect Place?
Yes, the comment is there was work at 158 Prospect Place and doesn't have a DOB notice. Does anyone know if LPC has looked at it?
Oh, we haven't heard. So that's not one that we have considered, obviously. If we haven't heard about it, I don't know if it's I would presume there's no exterior changes planned there if they have not, if it's not going to go to a public hearing. Which, since if we have not heard about it, it probably isn't. Is it underway at this point, or?
There's an additional comment that the building is set back, but they're putting up a new fence that is visible from the street. The fence is against the wall of the garage door.
So let me just jump in here. It is possible to search the LPC website for permits for this type of work. So if you do see that there's a building with work going on and you're concerned that it might not have a permit, you can visit the LPC website, And you can do a search, and they'll show you not just certificates of appropriateness, but any other permit as well, including certificates of no effect and certificates for minor work. Let me just pass you a URL for LPC.
If you have any issues with that, just let me know, and I will be happy to follow up with it and see what I can find out.
And there's a link just in case you want to use that for future reference. That link will take you to a form you can search for LPC permits. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will just to let you know, the ballots have been distributed, and hopefully you have found one. If you are eligible to a vote, you have found one um, in your email. So please have a look at that and complete it as soon as possible. I'll now move back on and give you kind of a brief report from the Housing Committee. Kind of two things that we're following right now. The first one, sorry, one moment. Adrian Gonzalez, did you have another question? You should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Hello, sorry about that. I believe I'm a member. I paid the membership fee and done the website before, but I didn't receive the ballot or anything ahead of this meeting other than like the whatever I guess general members of the public get. So just want to flag that. I'm not sure if I missed something else to become a member, but I think I've done the process. Sorry to interrupt on this.
No, that's okay. If it's okay with you, I might ask Emily if you could just have a look into Mr. Gonzalez membership and see if there's any information we have for him. In the meantime, I'll go on and continue with the report from Raul. I'm sorry. You said you did not receive a ballot. If you, one second. Could be that you are not marked as being in attendance. Hold on for me for a second, Raul. Sorry for the confusion, guys. One second.
Same with Samuel Livingston, it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. So that may be an issue of standing. But give me a second and we'll go through it.
And I'm sorry, can you say the name again that I was supposed to look up? Gonzalez, is that right?
Yes, Adrian.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, Raul, you are not marked as being in attendance. I apologize for that. I'm about to send you a ballot. So you have that. I don't, that's our fault. We apologize. Yeah. There are some folks who are now attending, but we're not marked as in attendance. So that's why who are members in good standing, which is why you didn't receive a ballot. So I'm gonna send those to you as I see you. Is there anyone else? Robin, you said you did not receive a ballot. 1 second. You should have received a ballot. This is going to your Gmail account, Robin. I'll send another one to you. Others.
Would you like me to read from chat? Would that be helpful?
I am reading it. Yeah, Sam, if Samuel Livingston, I do see you here, but you're actually not eligible. You're marked pending attendance. So for this meeting, you're not eligible. Yeah, it looks like we have kind of a long line here of folks who are looking for this. Again, I'm gonna try to go through. I think we might have to do a roll call on members who are actually here. I really apologize, but yeah, we ended up yeah.
Do you want to do the technology report while you're going through that?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead with that? That would be good. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Aiden Feldman, pronouns he, him. With me here is the co-chair of the technology committee, Phil Gonson. And yeah, just want to give a quick update on what we've been up to. So the big project that we've been working on is a new membership system. So you all probably aren't aware that, you know, the thing where we're talking about taking attendance and good standing and all of that is tracked like behind the scenes in a system that is seasoned. It has served us well for a while, but it's a bit dated and fragile and requires some manual work for our secretary each month. So it's something that has, you know, long been a thing that we wanted to look at, and we are finally getting a replacement in place. So Phil has been the majority of the work there, so I want to thank him for all the effort. The new system will automate the sign-up flow. So for new members, you know, you'll be able to fill out a form on the website, you'll get a request for payment right away, and then you'll get added to our newsletter and that kind of thing. So more streamlined process there. And then more relevant to all of you, you'll get an invoice for renewal each year automatically, like 30 days or something right before it's time to renew. So it's not something you have to worry about remembering. Hopefully this will, you know, avoid issues of people not being in good standing because they didn't realize they had to pay or whatever. So this should hopefully help with that. I just want to quickly show you what that looks like. So we use a system called QuickBooks for that invoice sending. And so it streamlines things on our back end, and that's nice. Let me show you an example one that we sent. So this is for $1 because it is just us testing, but this is roughly what it will look like. If I click through, I see a QuickBooks screen like here. I paid that, you know, test amount, $1, but you'll see the actual membership renewal amount, and you'll have the option to pay via credit or debit card or bank account. Yeah, let us know if you have any issues. Hopefully it should be pretty seamless. This is mostly a thing that will help on the behind the scenes for people like the secretary. And yeah, hopefully means like more seamless renewals and all of that. The next big project we're working on is replacing the website, phdnc.org. So also served us well, but it's time for a refresh. So that's the big thing coming up. Technology committee is always looking for help, zero experience needed. Yeah, we have copy editing tasks. We have, reaching out to different committees kind of tasks. We have design kind of tasks, not to mention, more technical things. So any interest whatsoever, we can find something for you to help out on. And yeah, let us know if you have any issues with the renewals or anything else. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Aiden. Any questions for the technology committee? We're very excited about deploying the membership system. I know you've probably heard about it in a couple of meetings, but I think will be much more convenient for both for our members and for our secretary. So I'm very, very excited about being able to deploy that. I have now sent out ballots to everyone who I saw in the chat saying that they did not receive one. So if you still haven't received one, I would say first check your spam folder and then just post it. If you just post a message to me, I will try getting it to you again. It's kind of funny. We did several annual meetings during the pandemic using Google Forms for ballots, and I don't ever remember getting having difficulty with it. So I guess something must have changed that we're not aware of. I'm now going to sort of segue into a brief report from the Housing Committee. As I started to say, there are two things that we're following. The first one I'm going to start with this is Atlantic Yards. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. This is kind of an update as to where things stand, a little bit of a review. So it's really the ownership of the project and the control over the development sites that's holding it up right now. We talked about this a bit in the October meeting. The original developer, Forest City Ratner, ended up forming a joint venture with a Shanghai-based developer called Greenland USA, and that joint venture built a number of buildings and then decided to borrow some money and use as collateral the development rights over the rail yards. So the money that was borrowed was not paid back. And by the time the loan had come due, Greenland had acquired virtually all of the interest in the project, and Forest City itself was acquired by Brookfield. So Forest City ceased to be a part of the project. But with the loan not being able to be paid back, the control of the rail yard sites sort of shifted into a limbo. So at this point, the rail yard sites are still owned by Greenland, but they have no ability to develop them. They can't be developed by the EB5 investors because in order to to receive transfer of a development site at Atlantic Yards, you have to be approved by the ESD as a developer who actually has the capacity to build. And the U.S. Immigration Fund is not such a developer. So we have a kind of a deadlock where this area here over the rail yards is blocked from development because the rights have been foreclosed by the lenders, but the lenders don't have a developer on the team. Up until at the time we had our October general meeting, we believed that that Related Companies was going to become that partner and work with them to develop these sites. That didn't end up happening. Instead, a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that Related was pulling out of the deal. Now, a problem here comes in that we are only 3 months away from the affordable housing deadline that we negotiated in 2014, and that comes into effect at the end of May. So without the 876 affordable units completed, The owner of these sites, which is now Greenland, will be responsible for about $1.8 million a month in liquidated damages. That's $2,000 a month for each of the 876 apartments that are not completed. So this is in kind of a dire situation. The exit of Related makes it look like the development plan for the rail yards, which is 20 years old, may not be economical anymore. In other words, it's not worth it for a developer to build. ESD, on the other hand, has stated that it won't negotiate changes to the development plan until a new developer takes ownership of the sites. Now, you can see why it would be difficult to find a developer who'd be willing to accept that transfer, not knowing if they'd be able to get changes that would make the project feasible for them. So this is the situation that Empire State Development finds itself in now. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. The lenders have now taken on a new capital partner, a group called Cirrus, that invests in partnership with the Building and Construction Trades Council, their pension fund. And they have said they're interested in working together to develop the site, but they don't yet have a developer on their team. And again, the deadline is only 3 months away. So this is some late breaking news that you will not have heard anyplace else before this meeting. But today in Albany, there was a hearing of the State Assembly Economic Development Committee. And the chair of the Empire State Development Corporation was there to answer questions from the legislators. Assemblymember Simon asked her if they had been presented with a developer yet for the rail yards. And the ESD chair, Hope Knight, said no. Assemblymember Simon then asked, will you have time to approve a developer before the May deadline? And I believe that Ms. Knight also replied no. And so Assemblymember Simon asked, what will happen after the May deadline if you don't have a developer presented? And Chair Knight said, we'll have to enforce. So that's a very significant development for those of us who've been following this, because we've been very concerned that ESD will not enforce the liquidated damages that were part of our settlements. So it's encouraging to hear that, because that means the project that may push the project to a point where Greenland will need to exit, and there'll actually be an opportunity to begin again with a new plan. So that's the Atlantic Yards update. And the second thing that we have been working on is the Atlantic Avenue mixed use plan rezoning that went to a hearing at the Borough President's office. It went to a hearing at the City Planning Commission, and we've testified at both of those hearings, both for some of the somebody's talking about set forward. Yeah, don't forward the link to the ballot, please. Let us take care of that. If you received the link, that's for you to use. Please don't forward it. I'm sorry. So we've testified about the affordable housing components as well as the streetscape components at both of those meetings. And that's it for my housing committee report. I'm sorry that you have to listen to somebody with such a scratchy voice, but if you have any questions, I'll do my best to try to answer them. All right, hearing no questions, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the Open Streets Committee report, and I'll turn it over to Saskia.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. I am Saskia Agens. My pronouns are they, them, and I am presenting on behalf of the Open Streets Committee. My co-chair is Catherine Pangaro, and there are many volunteers involved in this effort. Let me pull up my presentation. So tonight we're going to present you our plans for the 2025 season of Open Streets. This will be our 6th season. We've had 5 eventful years of Open Streets, and we hope to bring back some of our favorites, some of our highlights this year. I will start with our plans for Underhill Plaza. Similar to prior years, that will kick off this season with DOT's Car-Free Earth Day. This year that will be Saturday, April 26th. We're planning also, it's become a bit of a tradition, we're planning a community cleanup that Saturday, 10 a.m., starting at Underhill Plaza and covering the entire neighborhood. And there will be several other events as well, including a e-waste recycling event with DSNY. And we're planning, there'll be all sorts of music and activities for kids that we're still working on. And that will kick off this season, and we'll have our regular schedule of programming on the plaza. You can expect favorites to return, such as skateboard workshops, yoga sessions, the chess club, and then other kind of community events such as recycling, composting programs, code drive, or working to get the blood drive as well. So those are the kinds of things you'll see on Underhill Plaza throughout the season. So in a way, quite similar to prior years. And we're working also with the Livable Streets Committee into turning the community cleanup into a well, more than once a year event. We're thinking of doing several of these throughout the year. So stay tuned on our regular channels where we will announce that and ask for volunteers. Then for Vanderbilt Avenue, not unlike last year, we had to go back a bit to the drawing board. I'm sure you remember from the presentation last year, or just kind of a recurring theme now, that one of the biggest, well, there's many challenges in running Open Streets. One of the biggest challenges for us as organizers, and this is true for our colleagues around the city, is funding, and primarily with the government funding for this program going down, and us being a volunteer-based operation, that makes it quite challenging to keep up this program. Due to that, and feedback we receive from our stakeholders, including our restaurant partners in the program and others in their neighborhood, we've decided for this season to operate on Saturdays only. We'll still do the full season, May through September, and operate the same hours as prior years, so noon through 10 p.m. This, compared to last year, is about a 50% reduction in operating hours. So we'll have it will be a much smaller scope in that regard. But we hope to bring all the highlights that you've come to know from prior years, including salsa socials. We hope to do a Pride event again, get the circus back, and all the kind of like live music, events for kids, things like that, and skate and bike workshops. And yeah, a full schedule of programming, and of course outdoor dining with our restaurant partners. So that's in short the plan for Vanderbilt. So we're starting May 3rd. So first, that last weekend of April, we'll have the Car-Free Earth Day events on Underhill Plaza, and then the next week we'll start the Vanderbilt Open Street season through the end of September. As I mentioned, this is a fully volunteer operation. I wanted to give you a bit of a sense of how we, how the sorry, I want to give an overview of where the sources of our funding, as well as what we need that funding for. So for this season, here you see graphs of our projected revenue. As you see, a good chunk of that comes from government funding. That's the DOT Open Streets funding that we receive, DOT Plaza funding that we receive for Underhill Plaza, and the contribution from the council member. And other contributions. This is all based on prior years. So this is what we are hoping or projecting to receive this year. A good chunk is individual contributions. So that's our GoFundMe fundraising. I'll post the link in the chat shortly. And sponsorships from businesses that sponsor the program, as well as contributions from our restaurant partners. So those are the main sources of revenue. And then what we spend that on, the vast majority goes to staffing. As I said, we're a volunteer-based operation, but we do have our marshal staff, who I think if you've been on Vanderbilt, you've encountered our team the last years. We're anticipating that we'll have several of these familiar faces back. So they're the ones who set up the barriers and break them down at the end of the day, make sure the street is clean and that the setup is still in good shape. So that's our biggest expense. And also the most important people in this whole operation. And then in addition to that, we spend money on programming, all those events. And then there's some costs for things like supplies and equipment and stuff like that. Now, in order to pull this all off, we definitely need can use all the help we can get. So different ways to get involved. If you're interested in volunteering, I'll put some links in the chat shortly. There's many things you can help out with, smaller tasks like posting flyers, helping with programming events or setting up barriers, but also more like behind the scenes work, helping with social media and organizational stuff. We definitely are looking for your donations. We just launched our GoFundMe today. And it's also super helpful if you can spread the word on all of this. One thing that we've noticed is that there's many people who visit the Open Street and enjoy the program, but have no idea that this is organized by a group of volunteers. So that just raising awareness that this is a community-based volunteer organization that organizes this, and yeah, telling people they can help out by volunteering or donating is super helpful. So these are our plans for the upcoming season and how you can help out. And I wanted to say a few things about the Underhill Bike Boulevard. As you might recall, last year at this meeting was in fact the day that we learned that Mayor Adams had decided that DOT could continue implementing the Underhill Bike Boulevard after he had stalled that for half a year. And that decision was partly based on the results of the community survey that he had asked for. However, the mayor never released the results of that survey, so we foiled those data because we were curious as to the outcome. We recently received those survey results, and here is a graph based on the database that we received. Almost 4,000 people filled out the survey, and a total of 71% of people reported that they support the bike boulevard. And again, this was midway implementation, when implementation was halted. And if you break that down by location that people reported, whether they lived in their neighborhood on Underhill or elsewhere, you can see here the number of respondents, and that each of these groups, there was a strong majority in support of the of the bike boulevard. I wanted to share that because there was a lot to do about this over the last year. We've seen in prior surveys and our petition a lot of support for this, both for the Open Streets program and for the resulting street safety improvements. So just wanted to highlight that. With that, again, if you want to help out with Open Streets, please be in touch. I'll drop the link to our GoFundMe in the chat. We're posting that on our social media as well. So if you can boost that, that's also super helpful. And yeah, I hope to see you on Underhill Plaza and on Vanderbilt this season. I'm happy to take questions.
Saskia, you're welcome to take questions from folks as they put their hands up. I'm still kind of working on some ballot related stuff.
All right. Adrian, I think you were first, and I hope you can unmute. Or do I need to control that?
Hello, thanks for unmuting me. I just want to first start by saying I really appreciate all the work you all are doing for the Open Street. And it's one of my, personally favorite things about living in the neighborhood. I am personally disappointed, not in you all, but just in the end result that we're further cutting the operating hours from the cuts that happened last year. And I just wanted to maybe get a sense of what the gap, like maybe I missed it in the charts, but what the number is in terms of like, if we wanted to just go back to the reduced hours from last season, not even back to 100% before the hours were reduced last season, like what's the gap of money required for that? And just to get a sense of what the gap is, if you don't mind sharing that, or if you're able to share that.
Yeah, no, thanks for that question and for your support. So last year, this is not the answer to your question, but last year we reduced by, right now, I'm trying to remember the number. Yeah, you're right. Last year we reduced by a significant percentage, and now we're further reducing. So in a way, that's to some of us quite disappointing. I was actually on a call this morning with we do this sort of coalition call with other Open Streets organizers around the city, and I mean we're all kind of in the same situation, working on some citywide advocacy. The short of it is the city needs to provide much more funding if you want to have a sustainable Open Streets program, right? And what we were saying in the call this morning is that the funding that we receive from the government and primarily what we can receive through DOT is about like 10% of what we would need to fully run this program and to be fully, because in a way the numbers that we are working with right now are also misleading because it includes a lot of unpaid labor, if that makes sense. Like, yes, we pay our marshals, but everyone on our end was doing this, managing it, organizing it, spending many hours is all unpaid, which to a degree, right? We are volunteering to do this, but it's, yeah.
No, totally. And I'm just scared that we're heading the way of the Fifth Avenue Open Street, which is fantastic. And then last year they just couldn't have even a season. Okay, no, I hear you. I hear that. I get the government piece. If there's ways we can advocate for that, or talk to our council member who lives very close down the block from us on Carlton, happy to be a part of any of those kind of things, to advocate for it. It really is a gem to me. I look forward to it every season. It's quieter. It's just, I can literally put a seat out in the middle of the street. That always is going to fascinate me. So I appreciate all you do to at least have one day a week to do it. I wish we could go back to the 3 days, but thank you.
Thank you. As final note, after I'm done with the questions, I'll put in our volunteer form in the chat as well. And people are interested in helping with this type of advocacy work, also more than welcome to sign up to volunteer. Like, we have a whole range of tasks. let's see, Kathleen, I think you're next.
Hello, hi everyone. I'm Kathleen Karen. I really appreciate that the open streets is reduced this year, in part based on feedback. It sounds like what you're talking about. It's that you would much prefer to have a more robust open street. So I'm just kind of wondering how much the feedback from the impacted community members had an effect, but I appreciate that you actually reference feedback. What I want to talk about is a bit about voice and kind of running a program that has a large impact, not always positive on the neighborhood, and how PHNDC interacts or could step in to help be more helpful with interacting with that voice. So I'll just start with my own example. Is just, last year I paid my dues. Gib was welcoming us to join PHNDC, which I did. I reached out to the Open Streets Committee. I was welcomed to the Open Streets Committee, and then out of nowhere I was denied. There was a whole appeal process, and at the appeal that I did over the summer, I was told that I was not welcome in the Open Street Committee because I had organized a protest on the opening day of Opening Streets. Others have spoken up about the impact on their restaurants and have received immediately negative reviews the day after they've been public. And then the reviews even say, we don't like your position on open streets, like making it very clear that the 1-star Google review on either on Foodtown or on Cheryl's, a bunch of restaurants, was clearly linked to their position on open streets. We've had people put signs up about open streets on their residence on Vanderbilt, and people entered their property and ripped down the signs. We've had someone who had their address put out to shame them and to silence them because they were having another opinion about open streets, not just we love open streets. There was legitimate concerns. So vilifying and silencing our neighbors who have legitimate concerns about, they're not calling for the end of open streets. They're having legitimate concerns about the impact of a 3-day program. Really happy it's 1 day this year. That's really great. 3-day program, having legitimate concerns, being vilified and silenced should not be tolerated by the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council. I am not saying that the people who did the Google reviews was PHNDC. I don't know that. A lot of these people were anonymous when they did it. I do not know who ripped down those signs. I do not know who posted someone's address out there to go after them. Was PHNDC. But what I'm asking PHNDC to do, especially with the neighborhood, with the national context right now, is let's not vilify our neighbors or shame people because they have a different opinion about how open streets is impacting the neighborhood. I'm just going to finish up asking a question about footprint for open streets specifically. And also just really sidebar, we hear this in the CB8 as well, in the EST. Like yesterday we were there about the Underhill Boulevard and they were like, okay, now it's time to share your feelings on Underhill Boulevard, right? I mean, you can interpret that as positive, but you can also interpret that as very kind of not welcoming other opinions. Footprint. I'm assuming the footprint is the same as it was last year. I didn't hear what the footprint was. I know that Foodtown has asked me to share with them their request to reduce the footprint. They sent an email to Open Streets to Catherine and Saskia and have now sent the email to Keith Bray and to Community Board 8. And I can either just post it in the chat or it's not very long. I can just read it to you because he's asking that the footprint the Foodtown block gets removed. It'll take me like 45 seconds to read. So if you've been, and then I'll stop because I know I'm taking a lot of time here. So it just says, hi, Catherine, I hope it's finding you well. It's Frank Weedy, the owner of Foodtown, 632 Vanderbilt. I'd like to share with you our thoughts on the open street and its effect on businesses. We've lived through it for the past few years as the owner of the biggest business on the street and the longest frontage and have been involved in having honest conversations with everyone on the block. I know for sure that no business on the block, with the exception of one restaurant, want open streets on Vanderbilt Avenue between Park Place and Prospect Place. I hope it doesn't get imposed on the merchants when they all don't want it. 90% of the time, the block had no activities. The block was closed for no reason whatsoever. So much harm and inconvenience for so little benefit, if any, please help us get the block out of the program. Like for instance, Fifth Avenue, Park Slope, the block where Associated Supermarket, it's not included in the program. There are rumors of the restaurant that's advocating for Open Street will be closing down in the next few months. Sincerely yours, Frank. So to my knowledge, there's been no, maybe in the past 24 hours there has been, but there's been no in response to Frank, to his request or interaction. So I just wanted to share that with the whole PHNDC to ask if you would consider reducing the footprint per that request. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kathleen, for your input. Just wanted to respond to one piece. Just want to make clear that it's not, it's the first time I've heard about people ripping down signs and leaving negative reviews, and that's certainly not something that PHNDC endorses or does or asks for. Of course, we do not control what members of the public do. I mean, it's upsetting to hear this, but that's not something that was initiated or done by us. I just want to clarify that. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass it to Raul, who is next.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I put my things in the chat, but unrelated to anything anybody else has mentioned. So the first Botanic Garden in Brooklyn was in Prospect Heights, and 100 years ago at the 100th anniversary, there was marching bands and huge events, and I don't think anybody has done anything to acknowledge that history. And the other thing I'm always wanting to mention, Aaron Copeland. He would be 125 this year in November. He lived on in Washington and Dean. And I don't know if anybody do anything in the neighborhood 25 years ago. So it'd be nice to do something for him as well. I mean, really a pretty important character, and I'd be glad to support that. So that's it. Thanks.
So
Thanks.
let me say, we will do some public comments later. So for now, let's make our comments for the Open Streets Committee, and then we'll have an opportunity for public comments later. Is there anything else that folks would like to ask about Open Streets? Saskia, I think Courtney has a question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks. I don't know if this is a question specifically for this committee, but in general, I was wondering what's the procedure when there are questions and there's maybe an action item that a member is asking for? What's the procedure to then either move that forward or continue the conversation? Just because a lot of things were sort of brought up by Kathleen, and I'm just wondering what's the process to address some of those questions?
I can answer that, Courtney. Members in good standing have the opportunity to be recognized and to make a motion, and if the motion receives a second, then it will be debated and voted on. Does that answer your question? Okay, thanks. Sorry, Saskia, back to you.
Oh, sorry, hold on. Linda, go ahead.
Hi, guys. It's Linda Balsama. I just want to say we really appreciate the PHNDC listening to the community concerns and changing the schedule. And I just want to reiterate that taking Fridays off the schedule will alleviate the gridlock that has been a big problem from 4 to 6 or 5 to 7, whatever it is. And especially taking Sundays off will really alleviate the issues that our churchgoers are having. And it will be a huge, huge help to Mitchell's Soul Food, which we've been incorrectly saying is open 40 years. They actually opened in 1969, so they're a 55-year-old business. So that's a big relief to the people in the community who, enjoy going to church and going to Mitchell's and all that. I have a quick clarification on the Underhill survey. We actually met with Mayor Adams at City Hall last June, as you guys all know, and we went through the survey. It was supposed to be a very different door-to-door door knocking experience that the mayor had asked DOT to do, and they had not done it, so he discounted the survey results. So the survey data, while you're showing it, is a little misleading because it didn't include the people that we had asked to be included, namely older people, disabled people, people who aren't going to be doing online surveys. The other question I had in terms of the footprint, I'd like to just sort of reiterate what Kathleen was saying, that in addition to the Food Town asking to have their block removed, we also have letters from 7 other businesses on that block saying that it negatively impacts them. And because we have all of these issues with the B69 sometimes not getting the memo and trying to come down Vanderbilt even when it's closed and they can't make the turn onto Park Avenue, the bus is then forced to go out of service. So it strands the people who are on the bus, and then it also strands the people at future stops who are waiting because it then has to go back to the station. So if you did take the Food Town block off, that would address the issues with the businesses on that block, and it would also address the B69 would be able to proceed a block if it went the wrong way and make a left onto, Prospect, and then it would be able to go on Flatbush and pick up its route and not strand anybody. In addition, as everybody I'm sure is well aware, because he's been raising his voice for a couple years very loudly, we have an 82-year-old disabled veteran, landlord, homeowner, resident on that same block who is having a lot of difficulties with his block being on there too. So it addressed a lot of issues beyond the Food Town. So we hope that you really take that into consideration.
Thanks for that feedback, and I'm glad you're happy about the new the updated schedule. We do work with the NYC Transit regarding the buses. We'll make an extra effort again this year. Part of the problem is that the route change gets communicated, but then there's often like different drivers on the weekend who are unaware. So this has been a bit of a recurring issue that we'll try to draw some additional attention to this year, also working with our DOT partner. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for the Open Streets Committee? Catherine, I see that you have joined. Do you have anything that you'd like to add? Oh, sorry about that. Hold on a second.
Hi, yes, I'm so sorry I'm late, y'all. I had a work thing that I could not arrange to get out of, and unfortunately went even longer than intended. I am sure Saskia explained everything beautifully, but I'm here and happy to answer any questions. Frank, I did want to know, I did receive your email. It goes to the general Open Streets address, and I did get it, but I have had a combination of a kid being on school break and kidney stones and 3 jobs, and I'm just a little behind, but I do promise to respond to you this week for sure, or I could come by and chat if that's better. But I apologize for the delay in that. Yeah, we are really trying to make sure that we can not make sure everyone feels heard, but make sure everyone is heard, and try to address everything that we can, so that we can keep the things that people love and try to minimize the things that are problematic and or cause stress for people, and continuing to build up the services that we've been doing I assume, again, Saskia had covered all this because they always do, but we're increasing the kids' activities for more free bike lessons, continuing with skate, continuing with yoga, continuing with chess, continuing with music and art. We're increasing our blood drives this year as well, and hoping to add more services. Last year it was actually organized entirely by Acme. We were just able to support it by being by providing, the things we provide, but there was a pet adoption thing that was totally awesome. We've had lots of inquiries like that over the years, hoping to do things more like that, as well as other things that maybe partner with the food pantry on Klassen, who I'm active with. We're just really hoping to kind of to supersize all of the things of that nature, within the new footprint of just Saturdays. And so we appreciate the support in that. And if anyone has feelings, I'm sorry, I missed your name, who was talking about Aaron Copeland, but ping me if you want to talk more about that, because I think that would be a really cool thing to try and figure out how to acknowledge and celebrate, and any other services that you think would be good for the community, particularly things for kids and seniors, are always top of the list. No, sorry. That's Barbara. She's not that helpful, it turns out. She's cute, but not that helpful. So yeah, that's kind of it. And I'm available for questions if anybody has any. And thank you, Saskia, again for handling that while I was on a train, multiple trains.
No worries. I see Aiden has a question, and I also see a question in the chat that just popped up for me. So I'm going to answer that first. What's the difference between sponsors and restaurant partners? Actually, Catherine, you can take that one.
So restaurant partners are people who are on the avenue. We call them restaurant partners just to be general, but it's any business on the avenue, whether or not they are a full-on restaurant, cafes, bars, places like R&D Goods that are more, takeout oriented. They're people who financially support the program, whether or not they set up in the street. Some do, some don't. And so those are our restaurant partners. Sponsors are people who choose to sponsor us separately from that. Now, there is some overlap. There are some people who choose to be restaurant partners and sponsor, in this case, maybe be on a banner. But then there are some who are not partners and do not participate in the open street itself, but do support the program by being on a banner. And then some of those are people who are like Chelsea Piers in the past has been a sponsor, or British Swim School, which is all the way around Pacific, but they are on banners. So they're local businesses who want to support and also want to get their own names out there and spread the word of the things they do.
And Catherine, if anyone wants to be a sponsor or knows of potential sponsors, how would they reach out to you?
They can email me directly, or I believe, hang on, let me just check the exact, I think it's, sorry. I think it's development@phdc.com. Hang on, let me just make sure I'm not insane. PHNDC dash, no, sorry guys. Was not prepared for that question. I failed you. 1 second.
Probably development@phdc.org is what I would.
Okay, here it is. It's econdev@phdc.org.
No, I think it's actually the one Saskia said.
Okay.
Development.
That one is the one to which I receive emails, so I would recommend using that.
Econ Dev, because I think that goes to the Economic Development Committee.
Once we figure it out, we'll add it to the chat.
Or my name, Catherine kpangaro@gmail.com. That works too. Or just the Open Streets one. It'll make its way to me.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions for the Open Streets Committee? I also see that Comptroller Brett Lander just joined the meeting. Just want to.
Yes, let's take a break. If there are more questions, we can take a few more Open Streets questions as well. But since the Comptroller has joined us, I would like to welcome him and ask him if he'd like to say a couple words. It's wonderful to see you, Comptroller Lander. Thanks for making the time this evening.
Thank you so much, Gib, and the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Council. It really is dynamite to be back with you. That's a big city I'm running around these days, and being back close to home is pretty great. So thanks for all you guys are doing. Boy, there's a lot of fights we are fighting out there. One I did not have on my dance card was fighting Elon Musk over the $80 million that he stole from New York City's bank account 2 weeks ago. I don't know how much you guys saw this, but the federal government had awarded New York City $200 million for shelter and services for asylum seekers that we had provided to people that the federal government had released into our care. They cap it. It's a very low threshold program, $12.50 a night. And we had the contract. We presented the invoice. They came out and did a field visit. They approved the invoice. They paid the $80 million. And then Musk woke up and decided that he would fire the FEMA staffers who did their jobs of paying that invoice and reverse the wire and take $80 million that belongs to the people of the city of New York out of our account. We did find out in kind of a funny way because we don't keep the money in that account. We had swept it to a place that would earn interest. And so when they seized it back, we overdrafted by $79 million. And then Citibank hit us with a $15,000 overdraft fee. But I'm happy to say by the next morning, we had gotten the overdraft fee back. And then by last Friday, I pressured the law department to go into court after Eric Adams couldn't be bothered to speak up about it the first week and sue the federal government to get our $80 million back. And I'm confident that we're going to. They're good papers. Our case is so strong. And I just think this is going to be one of the things we have to do to stand up right now and protect New York City. After Trump got elected, my office prepared 3 different reports on where is the federal funding New York City gets, how much goes to nonprofits, how much goes to health and hospitals and NYCHA, and looked at the $9.5 billion that come into cities. So what we're focused on now is what we can do to better protect the city. Obviously, after the House vote yesterday, painting a target on Medicaid, we're going to be digging in and really looking at what the city's Medicaid funded programs are because we need a city hall that'll stand up and fight for New Yorkers. And unfortunately, in the mayor right now, we have someone who's more a hostage to the president than someone who's working hard to protect us on an everyday basis. I promise you in the controller's office, we are fighting for you and we're going to keep doing that. If you work for or you are part of a nonprofit that you think might get city funds, I'll drop in the chat after I'm done a tool we put out that helps you identify what federal funding might flow through the city's budget into your coffers. So that's obviously a big part of what we're looking at in the budget. But meanwhile, there's a whole bunch of stuff that just matters in neighborhoods like Prospect Heights, making sure the affordable housing we're funding actually gets built, that the right to counsel to protect tenants actually is funded, that our libraries and childcare centers are open, and that our parks are clean. And so I'll be focused on that as we move through the budget in the coming days. And I was really grateful to get this. Oh, one more thing before I ask if there are any questions. Obviously, one thing that's been great about Prospect Heights in recent years is all the restaurants that were able to do outdoor dining. When my office realized that, okay, so at the height of the pandemic, there were about 12,500 restaurants that had those permits. The city council passed the new regulations saying it couldn't be a year-round program. And so only 3,500 restaurants applied. But that was last August. And we opened a portal for the Department of Transportation to submit the contracts to us for registration in September. They got 3,500 in August. As of today, only 40 of them have been approved for a program that's supposed to start April 1st. So that means over 3,400 restaurants who are hoping to open their outdoor dining programs on April 1st don't have any idea whether they're going to be allowed to. So we rang the alarm bell, got that out into the media, and are pressuring DOT to sign off on and transmit to us every one of those remaining 3,400. So that's the kind of work we're doing in the controller's office. I'm really happy to answer any questions you might have.
So, Brad, I wanted to mention that with respect to outdoor dining, we have kind of a related challenge on Vanderbilt Avenue now. The State Liquor Authority has a permitting process in place for people who are part of the Dining Out NYC program, where they can
Yep.
get their liquor license extended to their outdoor municipal space. But the DOT and the SLA did not close that loop for open streets. And since the state executive orders on outdoor service for dining will expire on open streets will expire in July, we really need to try to get a solution in place for restaurants to be able to continue
Yeah.
to serve. That's a very important part of the economics of doing open
So,
streets.
so I'm glad to reach out tomorrow to Lily Fan, who's the chair of the SLA, and say, hey, we've got to find a way to close the loophole for open streets as well. Have you guys been in any? Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. Let's follow up on this because, you know, I love the Vanderbilt open street, and I want it to be viable. And let's figure out whether we can do something to get that loophole closed.
Terrific. I'm just going to tell a really brief story here because although maybe there's a very small number of people here in the meeting that know this, but PHNDC's first experience with Brad was actually about 21 years ago when we worked with him when he was the executive director of Pratt Center on a community survey and a set of recommendations around Atlantic Yards. So Brad is actually a very integral part of my early introduction into civics, and that's why I'm particularly happy to see you here tonight. And I really wanted to thank you for joining us. You've been a great partner to work with over the years. And of course, as you know, we're not done with Atlantic Yards yet.
Yes. Yeah, no. And there's a lot more to do. We've continued to work with you guys on making sure the promises to the community, that were made initially and then especially in the lawsuit, the PHNDC and the Fifth Avenue Committee, where I used to work, won in court. I'm here tonight in the role as city controller, but you do know we have an election coming up, and what folks want is a safer, more affordable, more livable, and better run city. I hope you'll check out my campaign, because what I promise is, as mayor, I will be working hard. Just like the neighborhood groups like you guys are really what make this city the livable place it is, and you need a better partner at City Hall, whether that's on outdoor dining and open streets, whether that's on dealing with moped chaos, whether that's on ending street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, whether that's on confronting the housing affordability and childcare crises, or just getting alternate side parking working again so our streets can be clean. Got plans on all those things and look forward to presenting them to you in the coming months.
Terrific. Well, I guess if you have a couple minutes for questions, I'll ask if anybody
Sure.
does have questions for Comptroller Lander. And if you could raise your hands on Zoom, that would be the easiest way for me to find you.
I can look at what's in the chat, but I got to put the glasses on for that.
We'll start with Adrian.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask a question. I just, my question is this: as mayor, streets, like the space that public streets take up, it's probably the most amount of space that the mayor has control of outside of parks without needing to get permission from someone else. I mean, we have obviously community board meetings and those votes are only advisory. And so there's a lot that the mayor could do with streets and reimagine how to use our streets, both for buses and people being able to walk and bike and manage the car traffic, the private vehicle traffic, and also have more space for the rains are going to come because we're going to have more rain because of climate change and more flooding, and streets probably play a huge role in that. And so I'm just curious what your conception is of your street plan, how you conceive streets as a public space that the mayor has a lot of control over. What are your plans there? Maybe in a top level, what are your plans for the streets?
Yeah. Thank you, Aiden, for the great question. Yeah, this is something I've cared about a long time. My first big fight in public office when I was a council member was the Prospect Park West bike lane, the first kind of marquee protected bike lane in the city. And there was a huge backlash. And I was the only Brooklyn elected official standing up for it, but so was Community Board 6 and local residents. And ever since then, I just have seen the transformative potential. I helped work with Jeanette Sadiq Khan in creating the Neighborhood Plazas program and got some plazas built in my district throughout the city. And again, those plazas in Kensington, I don't know, I joke that more Bangladeshi kids celebrate the Mexican Day of the Dead in Kensington Plaza than anywhere else on planet Earth. It's like so much of the magic of New York City happens there. So congestion pricing, which I've been fighting for 15 years and helped lead the advocacy coalition to bring lawsuits when Governor Hochul put it on pause, really makes this an important moment for the question, because with reduced traffic in the central business district, we're seeing a streetscape dividend. So we should do what we've done on 14th Street with that bus and bikeway on 34th Street and 42nd Street. We can pedestrianize some big parts of Lower Manhattan. And for every project we do in the central business district, we've got to do at least one, if not more, in the outer boroughs. So that's things like the 34th Avenue open street. That's things like Vanderbilt. I think there's some interesting opportunities for spaces that are going to be used some of the time, but not all, like Vanderbilt, to have some interesting design solutions like retractable bollards and design treatments that'll actually make them safe and compelling spaces. So yeah, I completely agree. And obviously just getting more dedicated bus lanes and bike lanes and better bus rapid transit and more plazas and pedestrian spaces are the things that are going to make the city great in the coming years. And this window after congestion pricing has gone into effect is a really important moment to do it.
Thanks. Jeremy, would you like to unmute and ask a question?
Hi, yeah, thanks for taking the time. You mentioned the Atlantic Yards plan, which I just read is pretty much very much deadlocked right now. So I was curious what your thoughts on how to move that project forward are. Like, do you have a plan for how to proceed?
I confess that I haven't read the most recent filings. So, I mean, I guess what I'll say is what you guys won in court in terms of getting the affordable housing built is like the first North Star. Any developer, related or otherwise, who comes in, that's what they owe. And, you know, in terms of figuring out how to get the deck built at an affordable price, or not an a price consistent with meeting the obligations to housing affordability, if it has to be rebid. I mean, if someone could come in and show how they're gonna do it and deliver on the commitments they made, great. Obviously Site 5 is an important part of the conversation, but to me, it's the commitments that you guys won in court. I mean, the whole reason the thing was done in the beginning was to deliver that affordable housing. I confessed when the Liberty won this year that it finally helped me see the value of the Barclays Arena itself. I was happy to be there and see the Liberty win. But the value of the project is for the affordable housing and neighborhood benefits that it was supposed to deliver, and what you guys had to go into court to get mandated. And I'll make sure that that's part of what I'm fighting for.
Okay, thanks. And it looks like we have one more question from Kathleen.
Hi, thanks, Brad. It's nice to talk to you again. I have two quick points. One of the points I brought up at one of your campaign meetings, and it was just about regulations around the open streets program, and just there is no requirements in the current regulations beyond for renewal applications like the PHNDC for input from the community. It's just about notice after it's been approved. So just, I've joined the PHNDC, but it's trying to kind of have some influence from within, but it's very controversial. Vanderbilt, I just want you to know, Vanderbilt Open Street is very controversial in Prospect Heights. So, PHNDC represents a certain portion of the community and an important part of the community, but what's being kind of quieted and silenced because the regulations don't provide for it is the other people from the community. I also want to raise about Underhill Bike Boulevard, to request a consideration of an audit as comptroller about the public space equity program that brings lots of money into under-resourced neighborhoods in the city to make them better. And that's being used and misused for the Underhill Bike Boulevard, which is a whole big thing. But the point about the planters specifically, Fred, I really implore you to consider, we don't know the systemic impact of how DOT has been using this program across the city, but certainly Underhill, it's being abused because Prospect Heights is a very wealthy neighborhood and lots of resources. So if you would consider looking into that to maybe stop that investment in Underhill with the planters, because it's very expensive. And this is not the part of Community Board 8 that needs that kind of investment. So thank you so much for coming and caring so much about our neighborhood. And, you know, I already contributed to you, so I wish you, you know, good luck in your mayoral campaign.
Oh, sorry, Brad, you got muted. Can you
No,
unmute?
sorry. I muted just to say something to the folks here, and then I couldn't come back off. Kathleen, thank you for the question, and also like props to you and to PHNDC for making room for, you know, like the neighborhoods don't all have the same point of view. It's important to bring groups together and get that stuff aired out and try to work through it. I think what I said to you at the time, I really do think, you know, that obviously open streets happened during the pandemic in a very fast way. For the established programs like that, I do think they should be by application, and community boards and neighborhood groups should indeed gather community support and have a clear process for how to do it, especially where city resources are going to be invested. You know, the Neighborhood Plaza program used to be like that. A neighborhood group could develop a proposal, say, hey, we've got a strip of street that we think could be converted into a plaza. Here's our proposal, and here's the process through which you know, pitch the community board, let people know, and build excitement around it. So that wasn't possible in the pandemic, but I think it is a good model for the kinds of streetscape and open space and plaza programs we're talking about here. And that's just, you know, I helped bring participatory budgeting to New York City, and it was such a great vehicle for activating people's imagination about the public realm and then giving people a real vote on projects. So to me, that's a great model. And I want to find more ways that we can activate the public realm with the energy of people from the community in groups like PHNDC, and with some honest conversation where neighbors talk about the things they want to see and don't see. To me, like, that's what's great about New York. Not that everybody agrees all the time, but that we're like actively building this local democracy together. So I really share that point of view, and I hope that's a bridge building one. I don't know enough about the Underhill project, so if I'm glad to learn more and have my team take a look in and see if there's something appropriate there that we could audit.
Emily, I see you with your hand up. Were you looking, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand through the app itself. Thank you so much, Comptroller Lander, for joining us, and really appreciate your attention. And so before you logged in, we were actually talking at length, and we had a great presentation by Saskia regarding the program. And I'm not sure you're aware, but we are planning to reduce the program to just Saturday this year. And
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and part of that is because of what we describe perhaps as inconsistent governmental support. You know, the program is run largely on the backs of volunteers and unpaid labor. And, you know, while it does very well, you know, it's part of the reason we had to reduce that number of days is because of financial support and sort of ongoing, and being able to, you know, count on it, especially, you know, last year there was like, you know, very mixed messages from the mayor's office, and a lack of support for something that people have invested a lot of time into. And I guess I just wanted to raise that.
Yeah. No, I mean, this really speaks to what I was saying about that Neighborhood Plaza program, which is the model I have in mind. Because the other thing is, if you don't provide city support, then it can only go in places where you have a set of volunteers who are able to do it and willing to give all that labor. And, you know, it's, you know, it's hard to do in every neighborhood. So Neighborhood Plaza program got started when the main plaza program was for places like Times Square, where a bid could run it. But the city said it ought to be possible for, you know, a community in Corona or Kensington or the South Bronx to have this program. And they put money on the table and created an application program. And that's what ought to be the case here. Like some resources have to be out there, so it's not all volunteer. So it's available to people in neighborhoods that don't have something like PHNDC, but might have kind of an entrepreneur who could think about how to run it. So, and then make the rules clear, make the funding steady, and run the program. And again, that was impossible to do during the pandemic, so I don't really fault the city for not standing it up that way. But now we know, and we should.
Thank you.
Linda, would you like to ask a question?
I would. Thank you so much for coming, Comptroller Lander, and speaking to us, taking the time. I appreciate you. I just wanted to follow up on something that Kathleen was saying about the open street. And, you know, it's definitely a program that benefits a certain portion of the neighborhood, but it is a controversial program here just because of the size and the scope and the location, you know, next to Barclays, and you know, the Underhill situation is close. So it's really backed up a lot of the neighborhood. And we're also part of a group called UNPCH that has done a lot of community organizing. And we've gotten signatures from, I think, 41 businesses at this point. We're having a meeting tomorrow with 8 local faith leaders. And the overall sense is that this program is very difficult for our bus riders. The B69 is the main bus that goes down Vanderbilt, and it goes to the hospital in Park Slope. So, you know, there was one woman who worked on Vanderbilt at the laundry who was disabled, and she took the bus every day to work, but because the bus was rerouted, she had to take Lyft and Uber, and she ended up spending over the course of the program $5,000. And she works in a laundromat where she had a free disabled Metro card. So we appreciate that the program is popular with a certain portion of the neighborhood, but it's showing some real detriment. It almost forced a 50-year-old business. I don't know if you're aware of Mitchell's Soul Food on Vanderbilt. They're very reliant on churchgoers. So we would ask that there be, you know, we were told that the schedule was being limited to just Saturdays because community concerns are being heard, but it does sort of feel from the conversation we've been having, if funding were reestablished, the old hours would be reestablished, and the Friday closing at rush hour was creating some very dangerous slowdowns with our first responders and gridlock traffic. So we're a little concerned that, you know, if the money is reestablished, we still want to make sure that our churchgoers, our bus riders, our disabled people, our first responders are welcomed into the conversation in a more robust manner. And just to follow up on the flower pots, it came up at a CB8 meeting last night that there are 54 flower pots on Underhill Avenue Bike Boulevard, and plants get changed multiple times a season. They get watered at night by trucks, but third-party contracts. I've seen them getting watered in the rain. So I think the funding for that was supposed to be for underserved neighborhoods. And that's what we were saying. Can you take a look at, if you want to put traffic calming stuff on Underhill, that's fine, but that amount of money, it should be going to somewhere like Linden Boulevard, or, you know, somewhere where they actually need the greenery other than Prospect Heights.
Happy to learn more about it and take a look. And again, yeah, I mean, I think the city's job here should be to provide clear rules, resources that are available in every neighborhood, and encourage neighborhoods to have good dialogue. And so I appreciate the points you're bringing. I appreciate the building neighborhood groups is not easy work, and that it's easier, at least if the city makes the rules clear, the resources steady, and the application process common for everyone. So that's what my approach from City Hall would be, not to kind of then reach in and say how you guys ought to do this. That's like a appropriate project for a neighborhood organization and its community board to work together on. Not always easy, but that's the right way, I think, to build community when there's broad agreement and then when there's disagreements as well. So I appreciate your Aaron. I'm here.
All right, well, it looks like there are no more questions. So once again, I'd like to thank Comptroller Lander for joining us. We know you're very busy these days. You've got a lot going on. We appreciate you taking on the Trump administration for them fulfilling on their commitments to us. And we look to continue our effective work with you here in Prospect Heights as well. So thanks again for
Looking
coming.
very forward to it. Thank you, Gib. Thanks everyone who came on tonight. We'll follow up on the things we talked about and really wish you all well.
Very good. You're welcome to stay on if you like, but otherwise we'll
All
see
right,
you.
I'm going now,
We'll see you
actually.
down
Thank
the
you.
road. Okay. I'm sorry, we did make a break in the Open Streets discussion. I don't know if there are any further questions remaining on Open Streets, but if there are, why don't we see your hands now? Question from Alex. Go ahead.
Hey, folks. Great presentation, Saskia. Thanks for putting the work in on that. Thanks, Catherine, for your work as well. I was just wondering if you could just reshare the GoFundMe link in the chat if you have that handy, and just a reminder for folks that please share this around to your networks. We really need the support at this time to make sure Saturdays on Vanderbilt Avenue are the best day of the week for all of us this summer. So if you're going to be out there enjoying the open street, or if you have in the past, please consider making contributions so we can have a really, really successful season and continue it next year.
All right, thank you. Linda, I guess you'll be the last on this. I don't want you to think that we've in any way neglected you. So why don't you go ahead with, you will take yours as the last Open Streets question.
Yeah, so it's just been a little back and forth. I'm wondering if the PHNDC members can clarify, the Open Street Committee members, because I know Catherine, you got here a little late. It's a little confusing if you guys have changed the schedule in response to community concerns that have been outlined in addition to funding, or if it's really just funding. So can you just clarify that if your funding is reestablished at a full, 300,000 or whatever it is you guys need next year, will you commit to keeping the schedule just Saturdays in answer to the community concerns about Fridays and Sundays, or are you considering just going back to the old schedule once you get funding reestablished?
Linda, let me take that. That's extremely hypothetical. We would not be able to answer any questions.
Can I? Right now, obviously, we can't answer a question based on hypothetical, but I can tell you that Saskia and I had been discussing a reduced schedule long before we knew what the funding would or wouldn't be for the season. We absolutely, obviously funding is relevant and it always will be, because there are quite a lot of things that we have to make sure are done and done properly, especially from a safety perspective and a logistics perspective. There's just, a million different little things. But we absolutely were concerned about Mitchell's, concerned about the bus issues. I live on Park Place. I am well aware of that street often being confusing. This is why we do so many of the things that we do in terms of outreach and meeting with NYPD and meeting with FDNY, and we are currently making lists and about more people that we can speak to make sure that we are engaging as many different branches and areas and groups within the community as possible. But I just want to assure you, from my personal perspective, because again, as I'm not in charge of Open Streets, I'm not in charge of PHNDC, but as one of the people who does and has been organizing it for years, we were talking about this. We've been talking about it for a long time, and it's something that has been that is something that we considered very carefully, and we wanted to make sure that was important to us this year to work on a reduced schedule.
Okay, I appreciate that. I hope we can stay in a mutually, beneficial relationship where we can share contacts, and we're happy to introduce you to whoever you need that we've met with that maybe you don't know about.
Kathleen and I have talked a little bit about some contacts, maybe with some of the faith-based organizations. We know some, but I don't know everybody. And I think the more we can communicate with one another on things like that, the better. And I appreciate your openness and willingness to work with us on that. And I hope you really do hear me in good faith that truly, this is not simply because no one gave us enough money.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's appreciated.
Even if they gave us a ton of money, I would still think that this was the right way to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Danae is raising her hand.
Sorry that I have to didn't have the icon. Listen, Linda, you were just talking about, your organization I think it's called United Neighbors of Prospect Heights. You just referenced that when you're in conversation with Catherine. And there have been some discussions here about transparency and communication. And there are a number of members of PHNDC. This is also an open meeting, so other people can attend, but there are members of PHNDC who are part of that group. But when several people in PHNDC that I know, including myself, try to get on that mailing list in order to facilitate communication, in order to facilitate understanding among the groups, I never get any response. So it seems that somehow I'm being blocked from your mailing list. So I'm asking you in public now, if you can put me on your mailing list, your full mailing list, and include me in all of your communication of your organization, and for anyone else who signs up as well.
Linda, you can respond in the chat if you like. Okay, I'd like to move on at this point and see if we can complete the rest of our agenda. The last announcement with respect to committees I'd like to make is we have a new chair of the Livable Streets Committee. That's Kaya Kuhl, who's on the meeting with us now too. And I'll turn it over to her to just let her introduce herself and provide a quick update on livable streets.
Thank you, Gib. Hi, everyone. Like Gib just said, my name is Kaya Kuhl. My pronouns are she, her. And I just taking over the co-chairmanship from Joseph Taylor, who's moving across the Atlantic Avenue. I think all of the things that we're working on right now in the Livable Streets Committee have already been mentioned and discussed. So AMAP, the rezoning of Atlantic Avenue, as Gib said, we testified before and sent a letter. We are planning to do so again at the city council hearing to encourage the council member to ask for improvements, safety improvements to Atlantic Avenue. As that portion, which is most of it is actually not in our neighborhood, is being rezoned, but also the portion in our neighborhood of Atlantic Avenue is the only part of Atlantic Avenue that is 4 lanes wide, both east and west of it. The avenue is much narrower. So that's one thing. And then the neighborhood cleanup, April 26th. Is the other thing that we discussed. Saskia already mentioned that, and also the fact that we want to make it a recurring thing and maybe have another one in June and September. And then one last issue that we are working on and will probably bring to the board in March is support for Dean and Bergen protected bike lanes, and we want to add some sort of context to a campaign that's currently going on by a coalition to sort of highlight some of the particular conflicts that we see exactly between buses and bikes, especially on Dean Avenue. And it would be great if both buses and bikes could be prioritized and not create dangerous situations with double parked cars that are primarily an issue on Dean Street that is much narrower than Bergen. And that's it. Sorry, I don't have a presentation. It's my first time as a co-chair here.
Well, you did do a very serious presentation at the October general meeting, so I think we can give you a little bit of grace here for this meeting. Thank you. And thanks for joining as the Livable Streets Chair. Our next agenda item is public comments. Now, we've had quite a lively discussion here this evening and on all of the committee reports. And so as we're kind of closing in on a 2-hour meeting here, I'm going to just ask if there's anyone who has not had a chance to speak yet who would like to make any public statement or question. I don't see anyone falling into that category. And so now we'll go to our election results. I believe that everybody, I either found a vote from everyone who is eligible to vote, or I sent a PDF ballot to those of you who I didn't find. So we do have a result to share with you. Emily Liu has been reelected as secretary. Congratulations, Emily. Steve Flack has been reelected as an at-large director, and Raul Rothblatt has been elected as an at-large director. So thank you all very much for standing for office, and I'd like to congratulate the new officers, and as well as Emily, whose help as secretary has been invaluable for the last 3 years. And I'd also like to thank Wagaya, who is a departing director at large. Now, in terms of old business, I don't believe we have any old business to take up right now. Does anyone have new business? Adrian, I don't know if your hand is up for new business. You're welcome to speak, but we'd like to also hear anybody who has new business to bring. Adrian, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sorry, the mute wasn't working. I'm sorry. I just wanted to. My only question, it's not new business, just who I can follow up on my membership question. I don't think anybody got back to me on that.
Yes, you can send an email to membership@phdc.org.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And Rachel.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. I'm curious if this is already happening in the neighborhood, and if not, it's something we might want to do. So where I work, we had I teach at a university, new school, and we had a kind of know your rights event for students, sort of largely around ICE. And it was also really useful information, including whether citizen, non-citizen, and sort of important kind of ally information in moments. And one aspect of it was also giving information for students who work in restaurants, stores, things that are sort of public spaces in which ICE could just enter, and kind of recommendations for them to take to the owners of those establishments and managers. So I'm just wondering if this is something that kind of a training, obviously they are sort of this kind of training is possible through a variety of kind of activist organizations. I think it would be really useful to have in the neighborhood. And obviously even for Open Streets itself as a public space. And so I'm just, wondering if this is happening already in nooks and crannies through restaurants or stores. And if not, who I can be in touch with to connect the people that did our training with people in the neighborhood.
This is a good question. I don't know if we have a specific committee for that or not. For the time being, why don't we have? I'd like to maybe leave that as a subject for the next board, and see if they can pursue it in some way, because it does sound like it would be a great thing to bring to Prospect Heights. Steve.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. Hi, I'm Steve Flack. I run the volunteer experience, which basically just means if you have any questions like that, just reach out to me and we'll figure it out. I'd love to get something going on that end, and maybe we can have a conversation, but it's a great place to start. Yeah, so contact me and we'll figure something out.
Any other new business? All right, well, I think it may be time to close out the annual meeting. We are just short of 2 hours. Really appreciate everybody who has stayed on for the duration of the meeting, and thanks for all the dialogue this evening. Since this is my last meeting as chair, general meeting as chair of PHNDC. I'd like to just say personally, I really appreciate everybody who's been a part of this over the last 21 years, and it's been great to work with you all. I really appreciate that opportunity. So thank you all. And is there a motion to adjourn? Mary, it looks like your hand is up. Are you making a
Yeah.
motion to adjourn?
I wanted to say thank you, Gib, for all the work you've done. And I hope that all the work you will continue to do for this community. It seems like you're going away, but I certainly hope that's not true. You have been you have done tremendous service for PHNDC, and in many ways your wisdom and your knowledge about certainly Atlantic Yards and this part of what has been an issue for the community has been vital and will continue to be. And thank you.
I appreciate that. Thanks very much. And thanks for those who are commenting in the chat. I am kind of paring back my civic involvement on a number of fronts right now. I tended to find that I get involved with projects that go 5, 10, 20 years. And, let's face it, I'm old now, and I don't know that I'm going to be really available to take on something of that scope at this point, given the other things I'd like to try to spend some more time with. So I appreciate everybody's wishes, and as I said, it's been wonderful getting to know all of you and being able to work together. So thanks very much. Is there a motion to adjourn? Looks like Aiden has made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Mary seconds. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much and have a great rest of the night.